US President Donald Trump spoke to his Russian counterpart, President Vladimir Putin, on the Israel-Iran war. Now, according to Trump, both leaders agreed that the conflict between Iran and Israel should end. Taking to the Truth Social account, Trump said that Russian president felt that the war between Israel and Iran should end, to which Trump responded that he shared a similar sentiment about Russia's war in Ukraine. Trump added that the call lasted for an hour and majorly focused on Israel-Iran crisis, while Russia-Ukraine war took a back seat. Now, parallel to this, Kremlin issued a statement saying that Vladimir Putin condemns Israel's military operation against Iran and expressed serious concern about a possible escalation of the conflict.
The exchange of opinions naturally focused on the dangerous escalation of the situation in the Middle East. Vladimir Putin condemned Israel's military operation against Iran and expressed serious concern about a possible escalation of the conflict, which would have unpredictable consequences for the entire situation in the Middle East.
Trump, for his part, described events in West Asia as very alarming. Now, this is according to Ushakov, but the two leaders said that they do not rule out a return to the negotiating track on Iran's nuclear program, also according to Ushakov.
Importantly, both the Russian and the US presidents, despite this complicated situation, do not rule out the return to negotiations on Iranian nuclear program.
Yuri Ushakov said on Ukraine, he told Putin that he had told the US leader that Russia was ready to continue negotiations with the Ukrainians after June 22nd. And now Trump reiterated his interest in a speedy resolution to the conflict, the Kremlin aide said. Putin also congratulated Trump on his 79th birthday. Earlier, we were joined by defense analyst John Spencer, who spoke extensively on how this conflict between Israel and Iran is going to unfold. And this is what he had to say. Listen in.
It is the question. Because every time that Iran retaliates, and then Israel is retaliating in kind, and now you see Israel hitting oil and gas facilities, part of the infrastructure and economy of Iran. So hopefully, the objective will be determined by Iran, and when they can either give up their nuclear bomb pursuits, because war is a contest of will. Of course, Israel has set the objectives, but that can be determined today, and why President Trump has said even right now, this may force a negotiation that the Islamic regime was refusing to have. Let's negotiate. Give up your nuclear ambitions. There's no reason why they have any enrichment, and definitely no reason to have a nuclear bomb. And that's probably would be the point of where this ends. But continuing to retaliate against Israeli civilian sites, and maybe they're aiming for military sites like the Kiryat in Tel Aviv, but they're not hitting them, and they're missing and hitting civilian sites and sending the entire population of Israel into bomb shelters. The geography, there's some differences here, and I don't like when not you, but other media have said this is tit for tat. Israel has stated its goals. The Islamic regime in Iran has only said reckless statements about destroying the Zionist regime, destroying Israel, and then turning to the United States, who they view as supporting this operation. In my opinion, that would be the fatal mistake, and would only escalate this, and would be the end of the regime if they decided to target a U.S. base or a U.S. vessel or something in the region.
Mr. Spencer also spoke about whether Israel has the ability to tackle Iran's nuclear facilities, and this is what he had to say. Listen in.
Yeah, that's been a great question, and I posted about this before. The idea that Israel needs a single bunker-busting bomb dropped by a B-2 bomber, it can't do that. Israel has shown in the last 20 months that it has the ability to hit things at deep depth, doing something called drilling. where they take a bunker busting munition that might not be able to hit the depth of like Fordo, which is 80 feet plus 200 feet underground, but they have a technique called drilling where they can just drill into the ground because they have air superiority. They don't need a one-shot bunker busting munition. They can like they just killed Mohammed Sinwar in Gaza. They used 50 bunker busting munitions in a matter of 30 seconds all around the site in which the terrorist leader at that time in Gaza was at. It's beyond my ability to know if they can truly hit at that depth. And again, the goal, which is for a military guy, matters. Israel has stated its goal is to roll the nuclear program back. Right? The ultimate goal is to change the Islamic regime's behavior, not to pursue a nuclear weapon. It isn't to destroy, which leads you to even the sensitivity, the dangers in which the IAEA has been reporting on. Like, if you hit a nuclear site, there is a chance of basically nuclear contamination, as these are centrifuges that are actually trying to enrich uranium. So it's a really complex operation to say, well, can they hit at that depth or not? Of course, you could seal these sites in, basically encapsulate them or basically cover them up, right? If you can't get to the depth. I've learned it a lot with Israel's operation is never underestimate what Israel can do, even with the technologies it has. So it's not a yes directly to your question, but it's also not a no. I'm not saying they can't do it without other capabilities.
The defense analyst also spoke on the chances of diplomatic talks between Israel and Iran. Listen to this.
But great powers are great powers for a reason. And I also unfortunately saw Pakistan basically aligning with Iran in its current project. I guess that isn't surprising, but I'm absolutely certain that there is a chance for diplomacy, and people like the United States and with Russia's influence over the Islamic regime, that you could bring them to the table. Military is just one of the forms of national power of a nation. And that's just why I've commented that I do believe the United States is one of the few people that can bring this to a close once Israel has said, like, okay, we've rolled this back. Now there is a great opportunity for diplomacy for Israel to stop its behavior. It isn't just about capabilities. Although you lose 9 nuclear scientists, there's some capability loss there on continuing your program. But this is about changing the Islamic regime's behavior towards the threatening of the survival of Israel and its partner nations, because President Trump just came back from a Middle East tour, meeting with Arab nations who are not also in agreement that the Islamic regime conduct in the Middle East is good, and everybody should be on the same sheet of music that Iran can't have a nuclear bomb.
During our continuous coverage of the tensions that are escalating in West Asia, we were earlier joined by experts around the globe on the ongoing conflict, and listen to what they had to say.
One of the reasons why I think Israel, and I have to tell you, here in Israel, there's a lot of Israelis who've been, it's beyond their expectations as to what they've carried out inside of Iran at this point, not just hitting the nuclear plants, but also hitting the Iranian guards, taking out their main commandos, their head of military. I mean, they've got this intelligence which is just beyond expectations, clearly on the ground. They had at one time drones which are flying across Iran, if they're not already happening right now, plus Israeli planes, Israeli fighter jets inside the Iranian airspace. And the reason why you're seeing this right now is because that Iran, for many, many years, built up this sort of outer zone protection for it, i.e. Hezbollah in Lebanon, and obviously the Assad regime in Syria, Hamas and Islamic Jihad inside of Gaza with their long-range missiles, and Iran always felt protected.
One thing that is very important is that to always remind ourselves that it was Israel that attacked Iran and invaded Iranian territory by unprovoked and illegitimate kind of the war imposition. So it's very important to know that it's Iran's right for self-defense and based on all international regulation and rules.
Look, I think this will go on for some days. I think it's very clear that The Israelis are really inflicting significant damage on Iran's military infrastructure. Clearly, they've taken out substantial aspects of Iran's nuclear weapons projects, and they've killed significant numbers of Iran's top military leaders. Iran, in retaliation, is now starting to strike at Israel with significant numbers of ballistic missiles, some of which are getting through because they're increasing the number of missiles being launched. So I think that this is going to continue on. I'm not seeing any indications of either side seeking an off-ramp, and I think that we should basically continue to watch this as it evolves and develops and see where both sides can ultimately take this conflict.
As you know, to start a war, it's easy, and apparently Israel, for years, for decades, has been building towards that kind of first beginning of the war. The more we know, the more it appears to be brilliant in so many of its tactical aspects, including beyond just the immediate things. But to bring it to some kind of termination, to try to de-escalate, it's not that easy. So I think the combination of Putin and Trump is, in principle, a good one to try to force both sides to de-escalation. Yes.
This is going to go as long as it has to go in terms of Israel's set goal to degrade Iran's nuclear program to such a level that they do not feel the existential threat that's been hanging over them for decades, actually, and calls by Iranian leaders, one after another, for the complete destruction of Israel. So Israel's in this for the long haul. How long Iran is willing to continue to be retaliating and firing back at the Israelis and hitting civilian infrastructure within Israel, and then take the hits from Israel on now its energy sector, which of course will cause great harm to Iran's economic situation. So this is really, I don't see an end in sight right now, certainly.